Hey everybody, Mike Wood here again with ViperSharp. We're going to do another sharpening video with this beautiful specimen, the Hinderer Firetac. So stick around. Okay, thanks for sticking around for me here. What I want to do today is talk a little bit about how to use a knife sharpener and give you some details to think about as you're sharpening any knife, really. We're focusing here on the Hinderer Firetac for this video, but any similar blade, same kind of techniques are going to be applied. So with this, traditionally with a standard blade where you have a short blade and a bit of a belly, a lot of times a good way to do the placement of the clamp, and that's one of the first things we got to look at, is placement of the clamp on your blade or your blade in the clamp. Now with the ViperSharp system, you've got the bonus benefit of being able to take the clamp out, and so I can hold the knife however I want to, set the clamp, and then put the clamp in the system. With other systems, you'll be a little bit limited where you're clamping into the system, but the idea is still going to be the same. Positioning your clamp so that you can get a consistent angle is one of the first things you want to do. And so estimate where you think you might get the best consistent sharpening. Sharpen that, or tighten that clamp down nice and tight, and then use a little bit of marker along the edge. Whatever color you prefer. I generally just do a black marker. Some people like red. Whatever you want to do. And we're going to put that, we'll lock that in. We're going to put that marker along the edge there. A marker will come off just fine, so you don't have to worry about that marking up your blade long term. And that will show us where the edge is. Then we can take our sharpening stone, and generally you want to do this with a higher grit, so we're going to use a 1200. We don't want to mar the blade, so we're not going to use a lower grit just yet. Now if we need to restore the edge, then we'll do that. Now with the ViperSharp system, you're going to lock in the back lock ring, which prevents the stone from falling in front of the blade. Then when you're doing your back and forth motion, that way you don't fall in front of the blade, come back and damage your blade that you're trying to fix. And so that's the next thing to think about, is when you're moving along the blade, make sure that you're not going to be damaging the blade that you're trying to correct. So we've got the Sharpie on there. We can see where the edge is because it's marked, okay? So the next thing we want to do is estimate that angle. And so we come down and we look at the angle that's there and adjust your sharpening system so that you think that you're at the angle that you need to be. Then we're going to take a few passes, and this gentle pass here is going to tell us where we are taking off the marker. And so as I look at that, I can see that we are removing marker on the edge, but we're leaving a lot of marker there up toward the shoulder of the blade. And so, or the shoulder of the edge. And so we're not taking off the marker on the entire edge. Now I also notice, since we've got to go lower here, I'm already really close to touching that tip of that clamp. As low profile as it is, it's still sitting out there far enough that we're going to have to adjust that. So not a problem. We'll loosen the clamp up here. And I think our positioning otherwise is good. And with a small blade like this, it's not going to matter too much whether we're back or forward, but somewhere toward the center is where we want to be. So I'm going to pull this back to where the clamp is not impeding my stone movement up on the front of the blade edge. Clamp that down again. Make sure that we're good and tight. All right, now that's going to adjust the angle a little bit because we've moved that out. So we already know we need to lower that. So we'll lower it down. Take a few passes. Now I can see that it's taking the marker off all the way from the edge up to the shoulder, all the way up here, but not out here. Out here on the tip, we're just getting the shoulder. And so we need to adjust the position of this knife blade in the clamp. And so this is where you've got to play around a little bit to decide what your best positioning is. So I need to get more of that tip there past the belly. So actually cantering the tip back this direction will allow me to get that. And we can test that without even locking things in to see if we're doing that there. And I'm running into the edge of that clamp again at this low angle. Most of my knives, I don't do at this angle. That's a very low angle for a pocket knife. There we go. I'm going to try that. I think that will probably allow me to match that edge. Now I'm going to put some marker back on here since we've removed it already. Get that back on to make sure that we are testing the whole edge. Take a few passes. Check it in the light, and it looks like we are just doing the shoulder on that now with that blade being moved. So we're going to move it around. That looks like the sweet spot right there. So now, hopefully you can see that. We've removed the marker all the way. We're matching the edge. Okay? So that's one of the important steps when using a knife sharpener is adjust your angle. Use the marker multiple times if you need to. Adjust your angle, or I'm sorry, not the angle. Well, the angle, yes. The angle on the system as well as the position of the blade so that you can see where you're getting the most consistent edge. Or consistency in the matching the existing edge. I'm going to start with a 400 on this one. That's the next thing you've got to think about is what grit are you going to work with. If you're not restoring an edge, if you haven't lost the edge completely and you don't need to do a major reprofile or restore, then a higher grit is fine. 400, 600, sometimes maybe even just a few passes with a 1200 is all you need. And so now, as you are starting to, the next step is to create the burr. So as we're starting to sharpen the system now, let the stone be the weight. Don't push down on the knife. You push down, you're going to push that blade edge out of the clamp or away from the clamp, and you're not going to be apexing the edge. So there's no need to put any force on this stone. Just let the weight of the stone do the work. Use as much of the stone as possible. That's why the ViperSharp has the lock rings here. I've got this one set so that I don't go up over onto the face of the blade and scrape the face. And I've got this one set so I don't come down in front of it. So having a locking system like that is very helpful when you're using a knife sharpener. And then, like I say, the next step that we're really looking for is just to get to apex the edge. And creating that burr is what tells you that you've apexed. And so we're filling for a burr on there on both sides. Once we've apexed both sides, we've created a burr on both sides, then we know that we're actually sharpening. Because if we're not apexing, we're removing metal, but we're not actually sharpening. And if you end up like that, you're not sharpening, you're not getting sharper as you work with your blade, then that's what's happening. You're not apexing, you're not getting all the way to the edge. So you want to make sure that you are creating that burr. If you're not creating the burr, you're not apexing. So make sure that you are creating that burr. And you don't have to wait until the burr is created on one side to flip it. You can move back and forth as you desire. If that's how you want to sharpen, that's fine. Everybody will have their preferences on how they do that. Some people like to flip it back and forth. Some people like to do the burr on one side first. We're getting close there. Bring it back over. And then the other thing to think about as you're sharpening is keeping the stone clean. The oil that lubricates your stone also helps you clean all of those metal shavings away. So as you're sharpening, give it a little bit of oil now and then. Clean that blade off. You can kind of see the metal filings that are coming off of that. And then you're going to leave a little bit of oil on there for lubrication to make sure that you're picking up and moving the rest of the metal away. Another tip that I would suggest you pay attention to is being careful not to round that tip. That's something that will happen a lot of times, especially with automated systems. If you're using an electric system and you're not being careful and watching that tip, then you can really round that off. It's a lot less likely to happen with a manual system, but still, if you're not careful and paying attention to what you're doing, then you could come out and round that. So don't do that. I like to use a circular motion, so I'm coming up and then down on that. That, for me, helps me just maintain that to make sure that I'm not rounding the edge. And if I come back the other direction, same thing. Circular motion is something that helps me to avoid rounding out the edge. Now, if you are sharpening for a while here, and how long that while is depends on the grit that you're using. We're sticking to a medium fine grit here with a 400. So it depends on the grit that you're using and the steel that you're sharpening. The harder the steel, the longer it's going to take to apex that. And of course, there you can hear that burr right here. Not so much back here. So we're apexing right there. We're doing pretty good with that. The harder the steel is, the longer it's going to take. The less coarse your grit is, the longer it's going to take. Again, try not to put force down on that stone. Let the stone do the work. Be patient with it. That's going to give you the most consistent, most professional results. I'm going to go ahead and flip that over. You can feel the burr when you're removing that burr on the other side, and you can usually hear a difference as well when the burr is gone. You will oftentimes find that a factory edge will have some variance in the angle from one end of the blade to the other. I've mentioned that a lot in sharpening videos that I've done. So do the best you can to match the edge and then go to work. If it's the first time you're sharpening the blade, since it was sent from the factory, then you might have to reprofile a little bit to make a more consistent angle all the way along the edge. So just keep that in mind. Be willing to be patient with it to do the work. I'm comfortable doing a little more of a back and forth motion back on the main part of the blade. The closer I get to the belly and the tip, the more I like to do those circular motions. Right there, we've got a burr all the way along. So we're still not quite apexing back here on the back of the blade. So that means we do have a bit of work to do here and I think that may be a slight variation in the edge, the angle on this edge. Whether that's from the factory or somebody else sharpened it, I don't know, but that just means we've got to work a little bit more. And I can see it. You can see that we have a little bit slightly different angle back there. A little less edge showing at the back of the blade than we do on the front of the blade. And I am trying to even that out a little bit as we work the edge. Use as much of that stone as you can. But again, don't push on the stone. For some guys, that's a habit you got to get out of. That's something that you have to break yourself of. If you're sharpening and you find yourself putting too much pressure on that stone, you're going to mess up your sharpening. You don't need to push down. There should be no downward pressure from your hand. You're simply guiding that stone back and forth to sharpen. Okay, I can feel it coming now. We're real close. So we probably actually apexed. It's not a pronounced burr. We're getting to the edge. But I want to make sure that it's obvious. Go over to the other side. Again, when you've got a burr, you can hear it. It sounds different. And it feels different. give extra attention and time to the area that needs more reprofiling. And one reason I didn't do a 250 on this is I don't want to put deep striations on this that I have to come in and clean up with future grits. So I'm willing to work a little bit more with the 400. So close to get the edge that I want. Now, if you're not aware that that burr is created by pulling this direction, that's what folds the metal over. Going this direction is not creating a burr. It's sharpening, it's removing the metal, but it's only that backward pull that creates the burr. So that's why both directions are important at this stage of sharpening. And now it's really just back here at the heel of the blade that I haven't apexed yet. Everything else is pretty good with that edge and that burr. CPM 20 CV on the steel here. Now I know I didn't go with a more aggressive angle. I'm matching the angle, but boy, this is feeling like some pretty good steel here, taking some time. I gotta hand it to you, Rick. This is a well-built knife. Absolutely beautiful. All right, now I'm going to just clear that burr off with forward strokes against the blade. And then one of the beauties of the ViperSharp knife sharpening system is if you need to test it, it's time to retire that oil rag. You can pull it out of the system, clamp still in place. Now what I'm testing for is that the back of that blade, the heel, that's really the part that I'm wondering about, and it looks like it's nice and sharp. It looks like I am getting it all the way. So now we're going to go ahead and move up to higher grits and just fine tune the edge. So we're going to take it up to a 600. And that's the next step in sharpening, is just go from one grit to the next, higher and higher, until you've got that edge as fine as you want it. Add some more oil on there. And since I'm just doing refining, well, we'll do a little bit of this back and forth here because I want to try and polish that edge as much as possible. It's a beautiful blade. It deserves to have a nice polished edge, so we're going to do that. But just remember that those back and forth motions may create a little bit of a burr. And there's so little of the striations there that I'm not too worried about a lot of that movement. I think we can clean this up pretty good. With just those forward motions. Keeping the ball knob loose will allow some nice clean movement there because that swivels in your hand while you're doing that cleanup motion. So it's really nice to have that kept loose. Ergonomically correct, ergonomically comfortable. You also want to remember to use as much of the stone as possible. So we're starting at the top of the stone, moving to the bottom while we move along to the front. So middle of the blade is the middle of the stone, tip of the blade is the bottom of the stone, back of the blade is the top of the stone. And that's going to give you the best use of that stone overall. Try to avoid using just the middle of the stone and just going back and forth. This motion of going against the blade is the best way to clean up that edge, especially when you're removing any bit of a burr. Nope, we don't want to go to the 250. We want to go up to 1200. So we're going to put that on there. Make sure that's clean. I never get tired of that feel and smooth sound of the 1200 stone on an edge. And honestly, that 1200 alone can do some pretty decent polishing. If you handle it right, keep it lubricated and clean, you can get a mirror edge or near mirror edge just with that 1200 with enough time. However, if you really want a shiny mirror edge, strop with some compound or lapping plate and lapping films. We'll do that in a hurry. But honestly, if we take that out and just look at that and what we've got right now, it's really got a pretty decent edge to it already. Okay, so give that as many passes as you want, and then if you want to move on to a strop or lapping film, you can do that. The purpose of the strop is really just to remove those micro burrs. Strop and lapping films, we're always going to be pulling away from the blade. You're starting at the top of the blade, top of the edge, the shoulder, pulling down toward the apex of that edge. If you go against it, then of course you're just going to chew up your strop, or lapping film if that's what you're using. So on those polishing options, just make sure that you're lifting up, you're pulling back. That's what's going to get you the polishing action that you want. Now I am going to go ahead and do a 900 or 900, I'm sorry, a 9 micron lapping film. And just make sure it's good and clean. Try and remove any metal filings from the last use. And then again, you do as many of these as you want to get the finish that you desire. How shiny that end result is really depends on how much time you're willing to spend on this part of the process. And it doesn't have to take a long time. This is not something that's going to be hours. This is something that is minutes to get your results. And I'll see if I can show you that. See how my lighting is to be able to see what kind of results we're getting here. All right. Careful when you're cleaning that off too. I've cut myself pretty good before doing that. So I don't know if we can get the lighting right to do that. Let's try that over here. So anyway, there you are. How to use a knife sharpener with the Hinderer Firetac. Thanks for watching, guys. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and if you'd like to get a ViperSharp, come on over to ViperSharp.com to pick yours up.